Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories. Ian nearly stopped breathing as he felt the warmth of her body seeping through his shirt. The two of them stood there at the bottom of the staircase for a long moment. Madelyn pleaded, "Please, my lord, you can vent your anger on me however you wish." Upon hearing her words, Ian's eyes widened in surprise, but soon, his gaze became sorrowful. Gripping his cane tightly, he struggled to contain his emotions. Their shadows were cast over the dark carpet, neither noticing that someone had been observing them from afar for quite some time before that figure silently left. Since that night, Madelyn hadn't seen Ian again, but she was sure it wasn't a coincidence. He was intentionally avoiding her. One day, she saw Ian approaching and greeted him with a bright smile, but before she could say anything, he sped away at an astonishing speed. It seemed he had already gotten used to his prosthetic leg. On another day, Madelyn deliberately waited outside his room, staying there for half an hour without any sign of movement. It turned out that Ian hadn't dared to leave, even locking the butler inside the room with him. But Madelyn wasn't ready to give up. "In my past life, I missed the chance to get close to him," she thought, "so this time, I have to take the initiative." "Am I being too hasty?" She reassured herself. "It's okay. Things can't change overnight. I'll be patient and take it slow." Her perseverance was finally rewarded on a beautiful autumn day when she entered his study. Madelyn saw the man asleep on the sofa, the undamaged part of his face revealing a strikingly handsome and masculine look. She was frozen in place for a few seconds, captivated by the sight. "Oh no, he's resting," she whispered, noticing the scattered papers all over the floor. She bent down to pick them up, arranging them neatly. That was when she realized Ian was behaving strangely. His body was trembling as if he was having a nightmare. Madelyn gently shook him awake. Ian slowly opened his emerald green eyes, breathing heavily. "Don't be afraid. I'm here," she said softly. "Do you need me to get some water?" Ian steadied his breathing and replied, "No need." "But why are you here?" Startled, Madelyn stammered, I came to deliver a letter to you. I thought continuing our correspondence like before would be best." As she spoke, she placed the letter on the table. "If I'm bothering you, I'll leave now," she added, starting to retreat. Ian interrupted coldly, "Why do you keep doing this? Are you mocking me for not listening to you?" "No, of course not," Madelyn exclaimed. She slowly stepped closer and knelt before him. "Ian, please give me another chance." Ian's voice was dripping with sarcasm. "Pity me, do you? It's driving me insane." "No, that's not it," Madelyn cried out. "This is my own wish. You see, back then, I gave up the chance. Every time I looked at that hideous face of yours, I was terrified. The pain you suffered engulfed me, and I couldn't bear it. But now, even though it's still the same scarred face, I feel my heart ache in a different way." Ian clenched his teeth and spoke harshly. "Nonsense. I never took that chance away from you." Madelyn didn't give up. She clasped his hand tightly. "Then, may I say one more thing?" she asked. "Please marry me." Ian couldn't believe his ears. He looked at her in disbelief as she closed her eyes and kissed the rough back of his hand. "I want to share your burdens," she whispered. A young woman kneeling and proposing to a man, a rare sight in those days. But his response was one of somber bitterness. "You've lost your mind," Ian declared, pulling his hand away and grabbing his cane. "Can't you see what I've become? I'm nothing more than a cripple now. If you're going to mock me, just be blunt about it." Madelyn clutched the edge of her dress, her voice trembling. "But you can still live," she insisted. "Even as a cripple, people continue living. They carry their scars inside them and keep moving forward." Ian sarcastically remarked, "You always speak like some kind of eccentric ghost, don't you? I won't bother asking if this proposal of yours is out of love, and I'll ignore everything you've said if it's only for your own benefit, in case you're still pitying me." The next day, Madelyn started her work again. A soldier, thrilled that his arm would soon be out of bandages, invited Madelyn to cheer him on at his upcoming tennis match. However, Dr. Allington sternly warned him, "No tennis. It's still forbidden." The soldier, frustrated, exclaimed, "Why? I used to be a boxer, you know." Unmoved, Allington replied, "Your body can't handle any strenuous activity, and what does boxing have to do with tennis anyway?" The young man, disheartened, muttered, "But, my prize money." Madelyn could only smile awkwardly to comfort him. The war was over, and Patient's spirits had lifted, which made her happy. "I wonder if Ian's emotional wounds will also heal one day," she pondered. Suddenly, the clinic door burst open. A man wielding a weapon stormed in, shouting, "Where's the doctor? Come out now." The other patients and nurses screamed in terror. The man yelled desperately, "Let me go home. Staying here won't make my arm grow back. I'd rather end my life than live like this." Realizing the danger, Madelyn rushed forward. "Please, sir, calm down," she begged. "Get away from me." The man roared, shoving her aside. Madelyn was pulled back by someone, but the man's knife grazed her arm, and blood dripped onto the floor. The weapon fell from his grasp as Cornwall stepped in, catching Madelyn with one hand and restraining the man with the other. "Where did you even get this knife?" Neo demanded, keeping a firm hold. The man, wincing in pain, cursed at the doctor, but Neo responded coldly, "If you keep causing trouble, I'll make sure your other arm ends up just as useless." He tightened his grip until the man was subdued and then dragged him into another room. The man continued to scream and sob, lamenting, "How can I go on living in such misery?" Madelyn stood frozen, as if she finally understood Ian's feelings behind his solitary demeanor. "Miss Renfield." Madelyn was startled when someone called her name. "Go get that wound treated immediately," she was told. Only then did she notice the cut on her arm. Cornwall sighed and frowned. "And let me give you some advice. Bravery and recklessness are two different things. You need to understand what's worth risking and what isn't." Madelyn had no response but to bow her head in gratitude and leave. "What an infuriating woman," Neo muttered. "Does she not care about what happens to her? It's hard to say if her foolish selflessness is praiseworthy or not." He ran a hand through his hair and murmured, "Whoever marries her will surely have their hands full." Back in Madelyn's room, Isabel and the head nurse were tending to her wound. "Madelyn," Isabel sighed, "it's admirable to be a nurse so dedicated to her patients, but you shouldn't put your life at risk for them." Madelyn could only apologize. Even Isabel was intimidated by the head nurse's stern demeanor. Suddenly, Madelyn heard a commotion outside the door. Looking up, she saw Ian leaning on his cane, breathless and drenched in sweat. His flushed face and frantic state left all the women in the room stunned. Ian approached, his voice full of concern. "I heard a patient went mad and injured you. Is that true?" he asked, moving closer to get a better look. "Can you move?" he pressed on, while Madelyn, embarrassed, turned her head away. "Aye," she stammered. As she struggled to respond, Ian knelt down on one knee, and before she could finish saying "fine," his hands were already gently examining her injury. He then turned to Isabel and demanded, "What do you think? Should she be transferred to a larger hospital?" Isabel, taken aback and flustered, blushed and stammered, "Well, it's a good thing the cut isn't too deep, so it shouldn't leave a scar." Ian sighed in relief. "That's a relief," he muttered. Madelyn managed to force a smile. "Right, but this is a bit awkward, isn't it? Who checks a girl's injuries in broad daylight, holding hands and all?" Isabel struggled to hold back her laughter at the scene. Ian, now realizing the situation, got up awkwardly and quickly retreated out of the room. His ears turned crimson, and his eyebrows furrowed as he tried to hide his embarrassment, though his face was as red as a strawberry. Rest well," he said hastily as he closed the door behind him. The moment the door shut, Isabel burst out laughing. "Ahaha, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was the great Ian Nottingham," she announced theatrically. A fellow nurse cleared her throat. "Isabel, compose yourself," she reminded. The next day, the Nottingham family gathered to discuss the future of the clinic. Eric argued for its closure, saying, "This place was only meant to be temporary. Now that the war is over, it's no longer necessary." Isabel, however, was worried about the patients and disagreed. Eric bluntly added, "Honestly, you can't call a place where people walk around wielding knives a real clinic." Their mother sternly intervened. "Eric, you may be my son, but you mustn't belittle the work your sister and I have done," she reprimanded. Eric, realizing his mistake, immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, Mother," he said. Their elder brother then spoke up. As Mother said, "We can't make a rash decision. We'll discuss this thoroughly and decide in the family council." The family council was a meeting where the Nottingham relatives gathered to make important decisions. Isabel knew that most of those relatives only wanted to take credit for the work she and her mother had done. Lady Nottingham sensed Isabel's frustration at being dismissed because she was a woman and gently urged her, "Let the elders handle this." Isabel, however, was seething with anger, her fiery temper rising. "Don't be like that," her mother continued. "We'll attend the meeting, and you'll get to speak with Lord Haas." Hearing her mother's matchmaking attempt, Isabel became furious. "Not that again," she fumed, realizing her mother was trying to set her up with their distant cousin. "Who cares about him anyway?" Isabel snapped. "I refuse to take part in that meeting." "You said it yourself, mother. Times have changed. I'll decide my own future." With that, she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Her mother could only call out helplessly after her hot-headed daughter. Meanwhile, Ian sipped his tea leisurely. "Ian," Eric pleaded, hoping for some support. Ian reluctantly spoke up in defense of his sister. "Well, she has been running the clinic while you were at war. It's understandable that she'd want to keep it open." Ian's hand trembled slightly as he set his teacup down, and Eric, though visibly pained, watched his older brother with sympathy. Ian had always been a strong and decisive figure, the family head. Eric aspired to be, yet seeing his brother's vulnerable moments filled him with a desire to support the family however he could. After the informal meeting, Ian descended the stairs, leaning on his cane. This new prosthetic leg was more comfortable than the previous one, but he still had to adapt to it. Suddenly, Isabel's voice rang out. "Absolutely not. Patients aren't allowed to smoke," she yelled. A young man in a wheelchair pouted. "Come on, Miss Isabel. Miss Madelyn wouldn't treat me like this." "Oh really?" Isabel retorted. "I wasn't planning on saying anything, but it looks like you can't keep secrets." The young man sighed. "War changed a lot of things. This entire estate, Isabel, myself, and even Lady Madelyn Renfield. She's become such a fascinating yet mysterious woman. She used to be youthful and carefree, but now," Ian's mind drifted to thoughts of Madelyn. Almost as if summoned by his musings, she appeared before him, as if by some shared connection. "May I join you for a walk?" she asked, looking radiant in the afternoon light. Ian gripped his cane tightly, masking his emotions. "The path is public," he said, feigning indifference. "Walk if you like." Madelyn approached him with a smile. "But I want to walk beside you," she replied. Ian tried to appear irritated. "You're getting shameless," he remarked. Madelyn shot back. "You should take a look at yourself. You were the one who turned down my proposal, remember?" At that, Ian's cane slipped unexpectedly, causing him to lose balance. Madelyn instinctively grabbed him, and his face flushed crimson. Ian suddenly burst into laughter. "Haha, you really are something," he chuckled. The autumn sunset painted the sky in warm hues as the two of them strolled side by side, talking and laughing. Though the war had left behind scars and pain, beauty still lingered in moments like these. Even from a distance, it was a sight to behold. Suddenly, commotion erupted outside the estate gates. "Please, just give us a minute. Let us meet the Earl," someone shouted. A servant struggled to hold back the crowd. "You can't come in," he insisted, but the crowd grew louder, buzzing like a disturbed hive. "There, the man with the burn on his face, isn't that him?" someone pointed out. "That's Lord Ian Nottingham, the hero from the Battle of X, right? Will you continue to lead the family, my lord?" Reporters crowded around, bombarding them with questions and flashing their cameras incessantly. "Is the young lady next to you your fiancée, my lord?" they shouted, snapping pictures nonstop. The bright flashes triggered Ian's memories. "Why did you bring something like that to the front lines?" a comrade had once asked. "We ought to capture a few photos of our bravery, shouldn't we?" Ian had replied, but the reminder echoed. "Just don't let it distract you from your duties." Beautiful memories always seemed to cut deep, reminding him that he had become disfigured beyond recognition. The shouts from the crowd became overwhelming. "Lord Nottingham, please answer us. Lieutenant, save us. It's my fault." "I'm sorry, Lieutenant. Why did you save us? What were you thinking?" The cacophony shattered the cage of his memories, leaving Ian feeling trapped and breathless. But then, standing before him like an angel, Madelyn spread her arms, shielding him from the mob. "Your behavior is unacceptable. Leave immediately," she commanded. "Are you all right, Ian?" she asked gently, her warm hand resting on his, providing strength and comfort. "Don't worry, you're safe now. Just focus on your breathing." Ian clutched onto the metaphorical thorned rope, slowly regaining his composure. "I'm fine," he said, though he pushed her away again, still cold despite her kindness. Madelyn knew all too well the state of his mind from their past life, and her heart ached, realizing she couldn't shoulder the humiliation he endured. Default text next morning. Photos of Madelyn and Ian were splashed across every newspaper. The headlines sensationalized the tragic story of the war hero, asking whether love had finally brought an end to his suffering. Isabel was astonished at the audacity of the press. How could such a reputable paper use a headline like this? She exclaimed. Eric sighed. They've stripped away all the dignity of our noble family. The times may change, but the shamelessness of these journalists remains despicable. Ian, however, remained calm. Now, we nobles are nothing more than fodder for gossip, he said, though his only worry was for Madelyn. How is Miss Renfield? He asked. Isabel tried to divert the topic. Let's discuss taking legal action instead, Ian pressed. How is she? Isabel reluctantly replied. She's fine. The article didn't even mention her name. Eric tried to diffuse the tension. I doubt she even read it. Besides, they're just exaggerating a nurse helping a patient. Isabel shot him a glare. Patient? Really? She snapped. What I mean, Eric stammered, is that we should focus on Ian's recovery. Isabel slammed her hand on the table. That's all you have to say to defend our brother? She shouted. Eric, we need to make those people pay for insulting our family's honor. Ian interjected. Eric is right. It's not worth wasting our efforts on this. Anyone who knows the truth will see that Miss Renfield is a compassionate person. Isabel muttered under her breath. Compassionate, huh? Their mother stepped in. Enough, Isabel. Ian, ever composed, advised his sister. You need to control your anger and move past it. Now, let's focus on the agenda for next week's family council meeting. Meanwhile, Madelyn was confronted by a man who had traveled to Nottingham Manor in the pouring rain. Is the article true? He demanded. Madelyn was taken aback. I didn't expect you to come here and ask me that. I haven't even read it, she replied. Have you forgotten all the virtues of a noblewoman? He scolded. You should at least read it if you want to become the wife of an earl. The man was none other than Lord Renfield, Madelyn's estranged father. Though he had abandoned his only daughter, the news of her connection to Lord Nottingham had him singing praises and trying to matchmake them. His condition may not be ideal, but what does appearance matter when marriage is involved? He said. The Nottingham family is wealthy, with noble status, vast estates, and funds from America. The boy was once handsome, so I'm sure your children will be beautiful. Isn't that enough? He added dismissively. Even if that Earl is now a cripple, we have no reason to lower ourselves. The vile words of her father left Madelyn stunned. While you're still young and beautiful, you should hurry, and her sudden slam on the table made her father's face pale with fear. If you come to me again to discuss such matters, I will cut off your financial support. He flinched in shock, disbelief written all over his face. What? Madelyn, furious, shouted. Listen here, father. I won't be dragged into those ridiculous rumors, and I will not marry Lord Nottingham. That's not what I want. Outside, Ian had heard every word that Madelyn had spoken. Just as she was about to say more, the door opened, and Ian stepped in. His face remained composed, but his emerald eyes held a sorrowful disappointment. I had no intention of eavesdropping on your conversation, Ian said softly, offering a faint smile. Madelyn felt so ashamed that she didn't know where to hide her face, while her father looked completely flustered. Ian remained courteous, asking Sebastian to serve tea for the two of them, and then quietly left. Madelyn stood there, rooted to the spot, her heart heavy as she watched him walk away. I shouldn't have met with my father, she thought. I should have known he would never change. But what about Ian? Would he change if I stayed by his side? Her mind swirled with uncertainty, unable to settle on any answers. All at once, a voice rang out. This is the spot where I usually smoke to unwind. It was Cornwall Allington. Today, he did not appear as tidy as usual. His hair, which he normally slicked back, now hung down, veiling his forehead. Upon seeing him, Madelyn grew annoyed. He remarked, You don't seem pleased. Is it that newspaper? Madelyn halted. Do not let it trouble you, Cornwall advised. No one pays much heed to those baseless stories. People delight in matching young men and women together, imagining they'll end up side by side. Madelyn responded sorrowfully. It is not something I care much about. I only feel guilty for troubling Lord Yan. Cornwall shifted the subject. I am uncertain about this. But have you heard? The infirmary will no longer operate. Madelyn, surprised, exclaimed. What? Truly? So? You had not heard? Cornwall observed. The patients will soon be transferred to various hospitals. A wave of sadness swept over Madelyn. If that is so, Then the doctors and nurses will also have to leave. Cornell seemed startled. You truly knew nothing, did you? Madelyn replied, I did, but her voice broke with sorrow. I did not wish to learn of it in this manner. What do you plan to do next? He inquired. Have you any place to go? I can go anywhere, Madelyn answered, so long as it is a place I choose myself. Cornell laughed heartily. As I expected. You would say so. Will you still work as a nurse? Madelyn replied, I wish to work in a hospital. In that case, Cornell offered, why not work alongside me? His invitation mirrored one from a past life, when he had once begged Madelyn to run away from her vile husband, Yan. Could she trust this man? Madelyn gently declined. I am grateful for your offer, doctor, she said, but, Cornell continued, a psychiatrist, yes, I understand your hesitation. Psychiatric facilities do not have the best reputation. However, they are a vital branch of medicine, especially for those scarred by the traumas of war. Do you not wish to be part of this modern revolution? Madelyn saw the passion burning in the doctor's eyes, but her decision was made. Her past letters, now mere faded memories in a dusty album, were not something she ever wished to revisit. Was there any meaning in condemning those who had wronged her before? I am grateful for your generous invitation, Madelyn said, bowing her head in a gesture of refusal. Cornell smiled with resignation. This might be my last opportunity, he murmured. Yan, go ahead, mock me and call me a fool. Madelyn spoke softly. I am truly fine. I will not regret a thing. This has nothing to do with Dr. Allington's mistakes from our previous life. This is my choice, and this time, I will not give in so easily. Cornell pressed. Is it because you pity the Earl? Madelyn laughed. You truly wish to tease me about that newspaper, do you? I already told you. It is not the reason. Cornell's tone abruptly changed. Please, do not misunderstand me. I simply wish for you to understand that you have the right to live as you desire. Madelyn sighed. Yes, it is my life after all. Farewell then. Their brief conversation ended as the sky turned a dusky purple. Cornell lit his cigarette, grumbling. She never hides her hostility toward me. It is truly maddening. Yet, he esteemed her greatly as a nurse, though she was so fragile. An ideal nurse, especially on a battlefield, should not let emotions muddle their duty. But Madelyn, with her heart overflowing with compassion, could not do that. If we must leave this manor soon, then this could very well be our last conversation, Cornell muttered. I feel as if our lives have been intertwined since another lifetime. Cornell took off his spectacles and smiled, a hint of recklessness glinting in his eyes. Hence, I find myself so impulsive. The next day, Madelyn was busy with her chores, washing patients' bed linens, when she heard familiar footsteps. Looking up, she was startled to see Ian. He glanced at her briefly, then turned and walked away. Madelyn bit her lip, holding back her emotions. Suddenly, Eric appeared, looking a bit awkward. Well, Madelyn, my brother can be quite cold, can't he? Madelyn sighed. I didn't mean to drag you into any of this trouble. Eric's face flushed as he stammered. Trouble? You know, Madelyn, sometimes I think you can be a bit clueless. Eric grabbed a sheet from her and scolded. You're working non-stop, even with a fever. You're prioritizing the patient's health over your own, and now you're even ignoring your own feelings, he continued. You don't need to carry all this guilt about Ian. He chose to go to war, and besides, you two kept writing letters to each other. Madelyn clenched her hands tightly, but Eric went on. Maybe it's because Ian is the eldest. He never shares his true feelings with us. You have no idea how happy I am that he has you, Eric said. Madelyn blushed. Thank you for your kind words, Eric. Eric suddenly grew embarrassed and laughed. We're friends after all. Oh, by the way, have you seen Isabel anywhere? Madelyn was surprised. Isabel? She asked. Eric's tone shifted to an exaggerated grumble. We were discussing the upcoming family meeting. I'm not sure if she's off on another date with that scoundrel communist or what, but she's been completely MIA lately. Madelyn silently recalled that Isabel even wanted to live with him after the war, admiring her friend's courage in following her feelings. She suddenly felt inadequate in comparison. Eric, noticing her reaction, remembered something. Hey, Madelyn, would you like to go out and get some fresh air? Madelyn looked surprised. What? She asked. Eric added, our family meeting is going to be held at a countryside estate in Calm, and there's a beautiful beach there. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Eric said enthusiastically, taking Madelyn's hand. All of our relatives will be there to discuss the future of the clinic. Even Ian will be there. So, what do you think, Madelyn? Will you come with us? He added excitedly. Even though it's a family meeting, everyone brings friends and partners. You're a friend to all of us, so you'll definitely be welcome. Madelyn was touched by his invitation but still hesitated. But I have work to do here, she said. Eric leaned in with a friendly smile. I've heard you've never taken a proper break. Why not take this chance? Madelyn remained uncertain, thinking, should I accept this invitation? In my past life, Ian never brought me to a family meeting. Was it because he was ashamed of me? After all, compared to them, she was just. Eric continued to persuade her. It would be great if you could help us discuss matters about the clinic. Madelyn was surprised. Are they really going to decide the clinic's future? Eric replied with a touch of frustration. They like to call it reaching an agreement, he said. Madelyn gently responded. I know this might be overstepping, but if it's for the clinic, I'd be more than happy to join you, as long as my presence isn't a burden. Eric's face lit up with joy when she agreed. That's fantastic. Maybe you'll find the answers you're looking for when you get there, like why Ian never brought you before. After the excitement, Eric even helped her pack, despite Madelyn's embarrassment. Thank you, Eric, she said, blushing. Eric's face turned red, and he replied, it's nothing. He had invited her because, after witnessing everything that happened that night, he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Having accepted Eric's invitation, Madelyn took time off to attend the Nottingham family meeting. Since she hadn't bought a new dress since the war began, she decided to purchase one for the occasion. But it had been so long since she'd gone shopping that she didn't know where to start. I hope I can apologize to Ian there. But what if he thinks I'm just doing it to ease my conscience? As if summoned by her thoughts, Ian appeared. Madelyn, why did you agree to go there? He demanded, breathless from climbing the stairs. Madelyn was confused. What? She asked. I heard you agreed to go to Com, Ian said, trying to catch his breath. Eric is way too excited, and you seem to be underestimating our family. Madelyn froze, clutching her dress. All I did was agree to join Eric as a friend, she explained. Ian slammed his cane on the floor in frustration. It's not too late to refuse, he said. Madelyn challenged him. Do you think I'm not good enough to attend that meeting? Ian raised his voice. Do you really think it matters now? Meeting those people will only bring you trouble. Madelyn's tone turned cold. Isn't it the other way around? Ian was taken aback. Compared to your wealthy and noble family, I'm just a nurse working at this clinic, she said. I don't know what you think of me, but I don't need your permission to. Ian interrupted with a mocking laugh. Oh, so you're planning to go there with some ridiculous explanation? Is it just a vacation you're after? Fine, I'll take you anywhere, France, Spain, name it. Anywhere but that estate in Com. Madelyn bit her lip, anger boiling to the surface. You're insulting me, she snapped. I've heard you plan to close the clinic. I won't stop you. The war is over, and life must return to normal. But I want to speak my mind one last time and thank everyone properly. Ian's gaze softened as he lowered his eyes. Do whatever you wish, Miss Renfield, he said, almost resignedly. I hope you have a wonderful time there as Eric's friend. Oh, and one more thing, he added, a touch of sarcasm in his voice. It seems your father is quite the shrewd man. The mention of her father made Madelyn shiver involuntarily. Ian continued with a mocking smile. Being a useless cripple with more money than I know what to do with and not much longer to live, it would make me quite the ideal husband, wouldn't it? You'd inherit a fortune. What a noble way to become a great wife. Madelyn weakly protested. Don't be ridiculous. Ian pressed on. Do you know why I rejected your proposal, Madelyn Renfield? Because I still have doubts. I've begged for compassion from people, but I fear you don't even have that. I can't stand being deceived anymore. I'm a monster now, and I won't tolerate being used. Yes, I am stubborn. One morning, the peaceful chirping of birds outside contrasted sharply with the gloom inside the room. I thought I'd forever be consumed by the flames, John muttered, but now I'm recovering. Madelyn, lost in thought, barely registered his words and even dropped the scissors she was holding. I'm sorry, she mumbled, bending down to pick them up. John noticed her distraction. You've been making a lot of mistakes lately. Is everything all right? He asked. Madelyn remained silent, so he tried again. Madelyn, did I ever tell you this? Dr. Allington may be the one overseeing my case, but you are the one who truly healed me. Madelyn was taken aback. You made me want to keep living, John said. Because of you, I can smile again. Madelyn clutched the hem of her dress with trembling hands, struggling to contain her emotions. She hadn't realized she'd become someone's reason to keep going, but the sadness in her heart persisted. I don't deserve that kind of praise, she said softly. I still haven't found your family. Seeing her distress, the soldier tried to sit up, and Madelyn anxiously called out, Be careful. He smiled gently. You don't have to carry everything on your own, Madelyn, he said. Everything will be okay. The war is over, and everyone believes that's enough. No one expects more from you. Tears streamed down Madelyn's face as she buried her head in her hands. You're right, she sobbed. I've been so foolish. I should have let him go, but this time I was determined to do better. Just then, a pair of arms wrapped around her, and a familiar voice said, I hate sad stories because they always make me cry too. Isabel? Madelyn looked up, surprised. Isabel nodded, her eyes glistening with empathy. Madelyn, you're too kind. You don't have to keep everything bottled up. Look at me, I'm fine living the way I want to, she said with a bright smile. Her comforting words helped soothe Madelyn's anguish. Thank you, Isabel, Madelyn whispered. Everyone in the room smiled warmly. Madelyn then noticed Isabel's outfit. Wait, Isabel, why are you dressed like a man? She asked, finally registering her friend's new look. Isabel had styled her hair differently and wore a suit, looking every bit the dashing young gentleman. With a beret on her head, she asked, Well, how do I look? Madelyn was puzzled. I don't think that's a problem, she said. Isabel patted her on the shoulder, her expression playful. You'll keep this secret, won't you, Madelyn? She teased. As long as you promise not to do anything dangerous, Madelyn replied with a soft laugh. I won't, Isabel assured her. I'm just taking a little time to rest. And for the sake of my love. Madelyn sighed, wishing that no one would put Isabel in danger. Isabel, beaming with confidence, replied, Of course, he won't do that. Besides, you'll keep this a secret too, right, John? The soldier sighed. Well, Miss Renfield is the only one who listens to me. Isabel smiled brightly. Thank you. Well, I'm off now. Madelyn suddenly remembered. Oh, Isabel, will you be attending the upcoming family gathering? Isabel adjusted her hat and replied, Sorry, but all those pointless debates with the elders aren't for me. Besides, there's someone I'd rather not run into. I've got important work to do. You know, my support is needed elsewhere. Sorry, but I'll be leaving all the clinic duties to you, Madelyn. Though Madelyn felt uneasy, she wished Isabel to stay safe. After several days of anticipation, they finally arrived at the grand estate for the family meeting. An elderly butler greeted them with a deep bow. It's an honor to have you here, he said, formally inviting them inside. Eric enthusiastically suggested to Madelyn, Once we get the chance, let's visit the beach together. Just as she was about to respond, Madelyn caught sight of him. Ian. He was quietly swirling his glass of wine, sipping slowly. Oh, look, Eric pointed out. There's an empty seat next to Ian. Madelyn shivered at the thought. Now that she was here, she knew she couldn't avoid seeing Ian forever, but she figured it was best not to approach him just yet. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out, Miss Renfield. Both Madelyn and Eric turned to see two of Ian's close friends. Long time no see, Miss Madelyn. Though embarrassed, she greeted them warmly. Lord Conrad, Lord Leverett, it's great to see you both again. It feels like we last met in London, perhaps even in a past life, she joked. Conrad beamed, shaking hands enthusiastically, while Leverett raised an eyebrow in suspicion. Is she always this cheerful? Leverett asked. Madelyn discreetly glanced over at Ian, who was observing everything but remained silent. Oh, by the way, George began, scratching his head. I'm getting engaged soon. Eric and Madelyn congratulated him sincerely. She might not be as beautiful as Miss Renfield, but she's quite lovely in my eyes, George added. Then, turning to Madelyn, he asked, Speaking of which, Miss Renfield, when will you and Eric share some happy news? I'm quite surprised at how close you two have become. The entire room fell silent as all the guests turned to look at them, whispers spreading quickly. Eric and that woman, someone murmured. Isn't she the one Ian once proposed to? Oh my goodness. Ian remained composed, sipping his drink amidst the gossip. Eric, however, spoke up loudly to clear the air. Lord George, you've misunderstood. I invited Miss Madelyn here as a friend. George paled, realizing his blunder. Oh no, I must have overstepped. Haha. Forgive me, Miss Renfield. So, you and Eric are just friends? Ian sat calmly, seemingly unbothered by the murmuring relatives. Madelyn felt a pang of embarrassment. At that moment, a new voice interrupted. Pardon me for being late. Every time I come here, I seem to get lost, and my taxi ride costs me a fortune. A man entered, flamboyant and speaking with an American accent. Ian's friends immediately greeted him warmly. Ah, Lord Hemsworth, long time no see. It was clear they were well acquainted, but Madelyn didn't recall him from her past life. The newcomer cheerfully greeted Eric, who introduced Madelyn. This is my friend, Miss Madelyn Renfield. Hemsworth's eyes lit up. Oh, I've heard a lot about you. Eric invited him to sit down, and Hemsworth called out to Ian. Ian, it's been ages, hasn't it? Mind if I sit here? Hossman asked. Ian, looking irritated, replied, do whatever you want. Hossman took the seat beside Ian and then greeted the guests around him. After some time, he turned back to his friend. So, how have you been, Ian? Ian answered in a flat tone. Fine. Hossman sighed. Huh. Looks like Isabel didn't come with you, huh? It was true. Isabel hadn't come. Instead, Madelyn was there, feeling an unexpected pang of loneliness. Why am I even here? She wondered. Can I even say anything about the clinic? That evening, the discussions turned to politics and wealth, filling the room with cigarette smoke. Madelyn, sitting quietly in the back, struggled to breathe and tried to cough as discreetly as possible, hoping not to disturb anyone. Ian noticed her discomfort, but before he could react, an older man with a pipe asked, Lady Catherine, I hear you've turned your estate into a clinic? Madelyn's mother coughed from the smoke before trying to respond. I was just about to address that, she said, but was interrupted by another fit of coughing. To be honest, I'd prefer if you closed that place, the old man continued. It was a noble and patriotic effort during the war, but now, no one wants to be reminded of those terrible times. It would be better if you started a foundation instead. Patients should return to their normal lives, and you don't have to keep playing the role of a saintly philanthropist. Madelyn was shocked by the man's callous words. To them, the clinic is nothing but a business, she thought, horrified. The old man continued, will closing it help us get around that dreadful inheritance tax? Another guest chimed in, even if we avoid taxes, the patients there can't pay their medical bills. Still, if there are tax benefits, it might be worth considering. Hemsworth, noticing Madelyn's distress, spoke up in his cheerful American accent. I've got an idea. Why don't we see how the clinic actually operates? He leaned forward, placing his hand on the armrest of Madelyn's chair. Ian's irritation and jealousy flared up at the sight. Hemsworth continued, why don't we ask Miss Renfield? She's worked there firsthand. Madelyn, feeling flustered, stood up. I'm not sure if I have the right to speak here, she stammered, but Lady Isabel established the clinic, and there are still patients being treated there. It's true that things have never been easy, but we operate the clinic to heal countless patients and help them reunite with their families. Lady Isabel, and I know that this work has only been possible thanks to your support. I understand you have financial concerns, but I hope to honor Lady Isabel's wishes and ensure the clinic closes properly and with dignity. I kindly ask that the clinic be allowed to continue operating a little longer so we can fulfill our noble duty. The relatives exchanged disapproving looks. Oh, what a passionate speech from this young lady, one of the women said. Are you implying we haven't done enough? Before she could finish, Ian interjected. I understand your concerns, he said firmly, but we don't run the clinic purely out of charity. You all know that I too am someone with a disability. He leaned on his cane for emphasis. I need the clinic just as much as anyone else to help with my own recovery. The room fell silent, and the relatives looked uncomfortable, clearing their throats awkwardly. Suddenly, a round of applause broke the tension. All right, let's put this dull topic aside, Hemsworth suggested. How about a game of cards to liven things up? The guests eagerly agreed, grateful for the distraction. Madelyn watched as Ian quietly left the room, the door clicking shut behind him. Hemsworth's American accented voice cut through her thoughts. You seem to be quite close with Isabel, huh? Startled, Madelyn replied, oh, yes, that's right. For some reason, the man made her feel uneasy. Hem leaned in and whispered, and you're also friends with Eric? He emphasized the word friends with a suggestive tone, which annoyed Madelyn. Yes, we're friends, she stated firmly, with absolute clarity, as if to leave no doubt. Hemsworth let out a loud laugh. Oh, how impressive, Miss Madelyn. I know your father quite well. He's not very good at hiding his true feelings, but you're certainly more eloquent than he is. Madelyn shivered, her eyes widening. Hem delivered one last remark. I hope you'll continue being friends with everyone here during your stay. Feeling drained, Madelyn just wanted to retreat to her room, but she realized she had left her scarf in the parlor. Returning to fetch it, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. I hate to speak ill of someone, but honestly, she's quite improper, one guest whispered. A friend of Eric's? Really? How disgraceful. A well-bred lady behaving so childishly. Eric must be as infatuated with her as his older brother was, another voice added. Poor Ian, after all she put him through. And now she's working her charm on Eric too. Madelyn staggered backward, the cruel words piercing her heart like daggers. She accidentally bumped into something solid. Ian. He whispered softly in her ear, ignore them. His warm hand steadied her, preventing her from falling. Blushing with sadness, Madelyn was acutely aware of the mocking laughter echoing from the shallow crowd inside. Ian led her to the exit of the mansion. Don't pay attention to them, he reassured her. They only live for gossip. Madelyn felt comforted by his concern. I'm fine, she replied, forcing a smile. I suppose I've been away from high society for so long that I didn't expect this. But really, it's only natural they'd think that way, especially since I'm nothing to your family. Her exaggerated smile betrayed her discomfort as she tried to appear strong. Ian gripped his cane tightly. Nothing, he said, a hint of anger and disappointment breaking through. Madelyn's eyes widened as she looked back at him. His face flushed, and he avoided her gaze. Are you trying to comfort me? She asked, noticing his outstretched hand. Ian awkwardly invited her. Shall we take a walk by the beach under the stars? They strolled slowly toward the waves. It was Madelyn's first time at the seaside, and the moment felt surreal. Ian, she said quietly, don't play the villain anymore. Ian froze, surprised. What do you mean? I'm not doing that, he replied. Madelyn explained, if I've ever done anything wrong, please tell me. Don't use harsh words that make me think badly of you. Ian opened his mouth to apologize, but she stopped him. Suddenly, she noticed something. Oh, how careless of me. Walking on the sand must be difficult for you. Ian dismissed her concern. I'm fine. I can manage, he said, but Madelyn felt a pang of guilt. I did it again, she thought, always assuming things, as if I know what's best. Ian, she continued, I wish I could make you happy, but I've realized we can't save anyone but ourselves. All we can do is help each other, little by little, every time you make a better decision or learn from your mistakes. That's the only way to walk your own path. Even if you make another mistake, that's just part of the journey. No one is perfect. Reflecting on everything that had happened in this second life, Madelyn had once believed she could save him. Her arrogance had made her think she could be his savior, but now she knew she had to let him go. I'm truly grateful to have met you, she said. I'll cherish these memories forever, even if the clinic returns to being a mansion and I have to leave. I'll always wish for your happiness. Thank you for being a part of my life. Ian couldn't comprehend his feelings. Did he want to scream, cry, or laugh? Rage burned in his chest, directed at the warm hands he longed to hold but couldn't. Keep that clinic running until you die, a sinister voice whispered in his mind. Use her guilt to trap her with you forever. He couldn't look up, unsure if he was seeing Madelyn or the demon in his heart. Madelyn's worried voice brought him back. Are you tired? She asked. You look pale. Ian forced a smile, looking into her beautiful face. Her cheeks flushed slightly, and she tried to ease the tension by suggesting they keep walking. The waves crashed on the shore as their conversation resumed, light and genuine. I think my vision is getting worse, Ian commented. Madelyn was surprised. How do you know that? She asked. Ian hesitated before admitting. Well, Isabel told me. Madelyn's face lit up with a radiant smile. All right, I won't press you on it this time, she teased. Ian let out a small chuckle. They talked late into the night beneath the star-filled sky, their laughter blending with the sound of the waves. And so ends episode of The Redemption of the Earl of Nottingham. If you enjoyed it, please like and leave a comment. See you in the next episode.